Well, I'm here with writer-director Daniel André for Running on Empty. Um, yeah, this was a really fun movie. It was kind of a romantic comedy, dark, very dark romantic comedy, I must say. Um, I guess what was the inspiration on this?
So it's strange. I've had to sort of pick apart and figure out like where this came from. And it kind of stems off of I wouldn't say it's a fascination with death, more of a healthy fear of death I probably always had since I was a child, like most people. And so I've always been interested in sort of trying to combat that fear through art in some way. And I did a short film years ago that was about a gentleman who gets a job picking up dead bodies and taking them to the morgue or to the hospital or wherever they needed to go. And that was a drama. But I wanted to do something that was more comedic, like a dark comedy. It was, a lot of the influences were a lot of the 80s, kind of like Scorsese, After Hours, Night Shift. Punch Drunk Love was a more early one. But I just thought it was a really fun thing to juxtapose death with romance. And then, interestingly enough, somebody had mentioned about sort of the sexuality aspects of the comedy aspects and where that came from. And it's weird. I don't know if people will bridge this gap, but it's kind of sexuality, like life comes from sex, which comes from sexuality, and that's essentially the opposite of death. So they're actually very, very similar in a way, or connected at least.
Yeah, I got a lot of that from the character Mort the mortician, which was a funny play. Um, and yeah, you mentioned Punch Drunk Love. There was a certain shot with Mort and Kate, side shot where they're like next in front of a window. Is that where
Yep.
that came from? All right, yeah, that
No,
came
that
through.
was actually kind of on the fly. That was just me and my DP Matt Clammer. And yeah, it's we shot it in, I think it's under 20 days, so we didn't have a lot of time. So a lot of it was just kind of being on our feet and being as creative as we could on the day and on the spot. And I think that was one of them.
Yeah.
But that one actually, for me, I think that one, while we were setting it up, I was thinking more of not so much story wise or theme wise, but I think there are some influences like Wes Anderson kind of shots, stuff like that.
And so when you write a story like this, because it's not real plot heavy, it's more of more like hanging out with the characters. When you're writing, so like when you're writing a say a heist movie or a murder mystery, your true north is the plot. You go from one thing to the next thing. But with something like this, it's more of a hangout movie, for lack of a better term. What's your true north when you're writing this, so the story doesn't get out of hand?
Huh, that's interesting. God, I don't even know if I could answer that right now because for me, I mean, it's all about the creative process, and less about even structure sometimes. Of course, I need to, I'll do an outline and make sure we have all the pieces and we're going from A to B to C, all the way to Z. But for this one in particular, I kind of, it was a purposeful thing to make it in a sense sort of like you were saying, like a hangout movie to see where this is going versus like structure and plot. And again, that was kind of purposeful to a throwback to like After Hours, the Scorsese movie from the 80s, which is one of my favorites, where you just kind of sit and you're like, what is going to happen to this guy? Where is this guy going? How is he going to get to here? What is the purpose of that? And for me, that was kind of what this kind of film was a let's just see what happens and not have any preconceived notions and just kind of have fun and come along for the ride type of thing.
All right. And with
I also like to
the
say it's also kind of an anti-romantic comedy, and that was kind of more what I think I was going for. And then, of course, when you get into the sort of whole uh, um, process of it with other companies and producers and whatever, everybody wants to push it as much towards like a traditional rom-com. But I still think it kind of held up in that sense of being an anti kind of rom-com.
what was the anti thing? Because I thought that Mort and Kate's kind of relationship was incredibly romantic, and even
Yeah.
Mort's kind of outlook on life, like the whole thing of when you die, aren't you afraid? No, it's I wasn't alive before I was born, so it's like not being born yet. Like there's a
Yeah.
bunch of romance, not your typical romance, but there's certainly some romance in there.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, and I think, this is kind of just in my head, but originally I had this kind of idea for Kate, and it's still hinted in there a little bit. If you notice at the end with the montage, uh, there's a difference with Kate. And that same gentleman also going on dates with the same women that he was on. And sort of the story behind that, and the true meaning of that, where it came from, is that at one point I was considering having Kate be more like a surrogate girlfriend to those who don't have much time left. It's almost like it was less about love for her and about like helping this person get to the end of their life, um, in the happiest, most positive way. And if that is romantic or if it's whatever, that's kind of who she was as a person. Um, and so at the end, you see her with a different gentleman, alluding to maybe she's done this before. So that to me, I guess that's why I kind of still stick with the anti rom com. And also too, I just, if you're gonna do something, whether it's a rom com or a heist movie, you should do it a little bit different than it's been done before.
Well, you nailed that aspect for sure. Um, not least of which is just Mort's kind of disposition in general. It's like because it was weird because like he goes to the so he finds out his death day, and then he goes to a dating service to match people up with similar death days. Which, by the way, awesome concept. He
Thank
doesn't
you.
seem like a guy that really wants a girlfriend. And he seems more curious about it than like something that drives him. And that's not something I usually see in characters like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously to be in I have actually met morticians who are completely cool, like normal people. You never think they were, but I have met some who are just very a little socially awkward, maybe on the spectrum. And that was kind of the route that I kind of wanted to go with this character. And it was sort of just his indifference to life in general. Uh, and that was my projection of how one might get if that's sort of your life is sort of dealing with people who have passed on. And you're kind of so aware of the limitation of our lives.
All right. And then also you got Jim Gaffigan in this. And I've noticed with Jim Gaffigan, he picks bangers. Like he's been in a bunch of indie movies, and everyone I've seen him in is really great. So when I saw he was going to be in this, like my first thought is, oh, this is probably going to be real good. And then I watched it, and it was real good. What was it like
Thanks.
getting the cast together?
Keir was the first one who came on board, and it was just I think back then I had watched Atypical, and it just clicked. It was just I was just like, oh, that's Mort. And lucky for us, he read the script and really liked it, and then from there it just kind of snowballed. And Lucy was on early, and Jim actually came on a little later, which I was blown away. I was so happy and impressed. I mean, Jim. I don't know if a lot of people talk about this, but Jim is in my opinion, I think is on his way to being an excellent dramatic actor someday. And even though this was comedy, Jim, out of the whole cast, was one of the ones who took it the most serious as far as, calling me up, asking me about the character, telling me about his ideas, which I don't think most people would expect, especially when somebody's coming from like the stand-up world. But he's truly just an amazing, dedicated actor. And I think we're only going to see a lot more really great things from him in the future.
I would agree with that. One thing, last thing I want to bring up, and I looked at your IMDb, and I saw you have a ton of credits for digital camera mastering for IMAX. Worked on
Yeah.
Batman, Superman, Avatar, Fury Road, Fury, like a whole bunch of stuff. What is that?
So essentially, cinema mastering is we work with the studios to essentially turn their film into an IMAX film. And so, like Chris Nolan, he'll shoot on both cameras. He'll shoot on IMAX and he'll shoot on 35 millimeter cameras. And so, for all the 35 millimeter footage, we have to essentially it's like taking a small res picture and blowing it up to like 10 times the size. And so it's like this whole process, and we work with the studio and the director, and we put together the reels and the sound and all the way until we built the final DCP. And so that was also a really good place, I feel, for me to sort of get some time and work around people like this. And you're just constantly watching reels and films over and over. And it was just such a good learn, a good learning ground for me.
All right. Well, I look forward to watching Running on Empty in IMAX.
Yeah,
But
me too.
yeah, Running on Empty comes out in theaters August 9th and VOD August 27th. And I hope everyone watches it. This is incredibly sweet and dark movie. That's not a combination you normally see, but I really enjoyed it. And thank you for joining me, Daniel.
That's awesome. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.